Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Baz Khuti with Modak, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDIQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Phil Dutton, co-founder and co-CEO of Solidatus. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, great. Just to get started and to set the scene here, this area around data and metadata, can you just set the context of what is data and what's the surrounding metadata around it?
Yeah, certainly. And I think this is one of the areas that often people really struggle with is we talk conceptually a lot in the data space, metadata, data, kind of where is the line? And for me, it's easier to talk in analogies. It's talk about, the real physical world that we live in. So if I think about the Library of Congress, formed in the 1800s, about 164 million items that they have. Imagine walking into this building. It's got kilometers of books on the shelves. How do you find the book that you're looking for, the information that you need, the data? Right. And you do that by going to an index, and you go to the index, and the index points you to a particular area, to a particular shelf, to a particular section. And that really is the metadata. So that's describing the where it is. But equally, that metadata goes on to describe the what it is. So is it a book about, history? Is it a book about geography? And so it gives us some more classifications and categorizations that help us to determine if that's the type of information that we're looking for. And I think that's really, metadata gives you that ability to find and understand the data that you're looking for. So that if we go away from the more traditional library analogy and move into something like the internet and focus on, the internet as the data, trillions and trillions of web pages. How do you find them? Well, you go to a search engine. The search engine has indexed the metadata. It's gone through the classifications that we individuals put in. SEO is all about optimizing those indexes against the metadata that we've structured in there so people can find what we're looking for. That really is the crux of kind of what is metadata. It's the description of the data that we're looking for.
Okay, that's great. Two great analogies, in both from a library perspective and also from a search perspective. And it's really looking at the forest from a top level point of view down to the trees and the detail there as we go forward. And so this area of data lineage, and the amount of data just exploded, both, as we go with our smartphones and IoT devices and so on. The whole explosion in many cases is duplicated. How does data lineage sort of play in this space, especially around the usage and access of data and this concept of metadata as well?
Yeah, and again, it's a great question, and it follows on from that index analogy, right? So now that we understand that we've got data, and we're not thinking about data as in the books, because books are quite siloed, right? Each book contains its set of information, and then the next book contains it, but there is no linkage between them. There might be a reference to another book, but actually in an organization on the internet, there is these linkages, these connections between web pages, between data sources. And so that is, that's the data lineage. That is the where is the how is data connected. And so
kind of hyperlinks as you go between documents, if that is coming.
Exactly. So lineage can exactly be considered as the connection, the hyperlink between documents. In an organization, you've got data sources. So you might have, a database that is collecting, personal information about myself as I apply for a credit card, right? So I'm capturing some personal information that's stored in a customer database. Then as I've been granted the credit card and I start to use it, those transactions, they end up in a transaction database, but they need to be linked, and we need to understand that I'm the person that is creating those transactions. And then those transactions need to be able to be aggregated and reported to a regulator, to finance, to risk. And so we need to understand where that data goes and how it impacts our organization. And lineage really is that connectivity. It's not just about, it used to be about, just the physical flow of data in an organization. But I think actually it's fundamentally shifting now that it's about the connection. So whether it's a connection to a physical thing like a database or to a line of business, who needs this data? For what purpose do they need it? So lineage really starts to unlock more of the business value in the organization.
And so if you get kind of layers here, you got the data, you got the metadata, and then you build on that metadata to build those hyperlinks, essentially the relationships. So you can now build that lineage across that kind of a tube map across, as I call it, across all your data. So you can see the relationships.
Exactly. And for me, it's a blueprint, right? It's the blueprint of the organization. It's a data blueprint of how an organization is constructed. And I think that for me is a great analogy. The blueprint, the idea of, think of it as okay, a house or a building.
Okay.
You have multiple blueprints, and each blueprint exposes different sets of data.
Right. Okay. All right. Great. Thanks. Good analogy there. So as we work more and more with the cloud and the explosion of data moving to the cloud, what are kind of the opportunities and challenges you're seeing? And how does data lineage play in this mix of data being on the cloud and on-prem as well?
So I think if we look at the challenge that we're coming from first. So for me, over the last 30, 40 years, we've had rapid organic growth in a really new space that is very conceptual. So, technology has enabled us to do so many things. Data is enabling us to do so many things that we couldn't do in the past. And that exponential growth, this changing technology platform that we're sort of sitting within the ecosystem, changing constantly. Mainframes back in the 60s. Now we're up to massive cloud compute, quantum computing. It's constantly evolving at an ever increasing pace. And so the challenge is we've never really had a step back moment. We've never had that opportunity to stop and go, if we were going to engineer this, how would we build it? Now, cloud gives us that opportunity, right? We're given this green field where it's no longer your data center that you're having to worry about. You're having to create something afresh. And so the challenge is we need to first understand what we have in order to move it to the cloud, because the cloud is an infinite amount of possibility. But we don't want to replicate kind of the mistakes of the past. We want to learn from what we've done. We need to engineer better than we have in the past, because we have a much greater grasp on the scale, the complexity, the type of data, the what we want to do with it. And so therefore we need to really understand that data before we move it to the cloud. Now, the cloud, as I mentioned, gives us this greenfield opportunity to build better, to build things by default and by design. And I think that's a really key phrase in our organization, is by default and by design. How do we make this seamless part of an organization's DNA rather than an afterthought of, we need to document what we've done? No, we need to design what we're going to do. Right. And I think that's the shift that we're seeing.
And how does lineage, in terms of when you're in the cloud and maybe you're in the same cloud provider, but you're in multiple cloud regions, as they call them, yeah? Or even within one cloud region, you're in multiple VPCs, virtual private clouds. How does lineage then in the cloud space then help you?
Yeah, I mean, it's critical. I think the tsunami of GDPR-like regulations that have followed now means that data residency, where it exists, who's accessing it, from where are they accessing it, what are they doing with it, for what purpose, is at the forefront of everyone's mind, because you can get yourself into really hot water very, very easily if you don't understand where your data starts, where it goes, who's consuming it, for what purpose. So lineage gives you that understanding. It gives you that blueprint of the data that sits within your cloud environment. And if you've got a hybrid cloud, well, you need to have that across all of your cloud. It's like trying to build a chain fence and then having a link missing in the middle of it. Your fence is now not a fence, right? You've got to have complete coverage of cloud A, cloud B, and on-prem if you've got on-prem. So this is you've got to try and cover the estate that you're working with, because otherwise you have dark spots. You have this, the hidden data, and that's problematic.
That's a great point on that. And I thank you very much today, Phil, for your time and for joining me today. Please visit CDO Magazine for any additional interviews. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Baz.